Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to pull this together in terms of some prevention around e-cigarettes and pods, and particularly Juul, that we have. So in disclosure for me, I also, like Divya, not only don't take any tobacco money, but they hate me, and they are apt to tell me they hate me, and I should say my Twitter. I am the founder and executive director of the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit that I'm going to be talking about, but I do not get any money for talking about it. We don't sell the product, it's free and things like that. So just so you know, there's no conflict of interest here. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, given that we are at the Society for Prevention Research, is a prevention toolkit that we have. This is called the Stanford Tobacco Prevention Toolkit. It is completely online, interactive, and free, and there's the website. If you're interested in looking at it, you can follow along, although maybe not too much, so you can still hear us talking. But it's at tobaccopreventiontoolkit.stanford.edu. And this toolkit, and I'll show you a little bit more about it, but like I said, it's completely free, completely online. It has a number of different modules. We have a number of different activities and PowerPoints and lots of information that I'm going to walk you through just a little bit of it. Just to tell you our core team, so I'm the founder, and then I have two co-founders who are educators, Iris Aknoff and Stephen Smooin. This really is, talk about community-based participatory research at its finest, and also looking at sort of town and gown or combining academic and educators. We really came together over a number of years and a lot of money, a lot of funding to really pull this together in a way that it's both research informed, but also really education informed and works in the schools. And then I have two project co-directors, Adrian and Richard. And then if you look on our website, about 100 other people. It really does take a village to develop this. Just along those village, we have funding from TRDRP, CVS Health Foundation, and the California Department of Education. So what is this thing I'm talking about? So the goals of this toolkit really is geared more towards educators. And when I say educators, I mean pretty broadly defined. Educators could be parents, they could be healthcare providers, they could be people in schools, community-based organizations, peer educators and such. So it's really to provide lessons and materials that are really geared mostly to middle and high school students, although I will say that we've heard 4th and 5th grade classes using the materials, and it's to help adolescents understand the basic information around all tobacco products and the harm that they cause. And you'll see within this we have modules that focus on hookah, smokeless tobacco, cigars, cigarettes, and then of course e-cigarettes. To help youth gain awareness of the marketing strategy, so we pull a lot from Divya and Rob Jackler's team for SRITA, a lot of the materials from them, so that way it helps adolescents understand that they're being targeted in marketing to, and therefore to help adolescents develop refusal skills, and then to ultimately help prevent, reduce, and stop adolescents from using these products. Even though we are a research group, but without going into a ton of research, just to tell you that it is very much evidence-based that we developed. So it started with theories of adolescent development, theories of adolescent risk-taking behaviors, social cognitive theory, social influence theory, and then a lot on positive youth development. It was based in research, our research in my lab, and research that others have done on why adolescents are engaging in risk behaviors around tobacco use, what they understand, what they don't understand, and their misperceptions that then goes into us being able to then target and help those misperceptions. It was based on a number of partnerships. As I said, we really did focus groups and workshops with middle and high school students, parents, and educators and administrators throughout California. It's a California base, but it's been used throughout the US, actually globally, and really to be able to define what is needed. It's evidence informed, and then what's nice about it being online, if any of you are familiar with some of the worksheets that are out there and the workbooks that are not online, you have to pay $20 per person or whatever it is. This is not only free, but anytime we have any issues, a link breaks, or we find out that there's new information or a new product comes on the market like Juul, then we're able to very quickly add and revise our toolkit, and we can do so within a day, which is nice. And it's also been fact-checked, and so we have had a number of, in addition to our own team, but we tend to be blind to things. You always think anything you build is great. We make sure that we have physicians, healthcare providers who work with youth around tobacco prevention, cessation experts, people who deal with nicotine addiction have all fact-checked it. So that is the Tobacco Prevention Toolkit. So this is what the landing page looks like. If any of you have ever done any prevention, you'd probably be sympathetic to the fact that it took us about a year to figure out how to even put this thing online and what it should look like, and it's gone through a number of different iterations in it. But this is basically the landing page, and then you can see at the bottom and along the top the different modules that are there. I won't read this, but this is the About page, and it gives you the goals of the toolkit and then best practices in using the toolkit. We also have a curriculum table that's on the About page, and you could see how much is in there within the toolkit. And so the Everything Tobacco is really more cigarettes, but tobacco leaves. It also is where we talk about menthol as a social justice issue. We're going to be adding an LGBTQ section on there and lessons very soon. We're going to be adding something on the environmental impact of all tobacco products, including the newer pods, will be on there. We have a very large unit on e-cigarettes and vape pens. That's what I'm going to focus on more today. And within there, we have one entire unit just focused on Juul and other pod-based products. We have hookah, smokeless, and then an entire section on nicotine addiction. When we developed this, we talked to schools and parents, and what originally this, by the way, was originally developed to just be an addition to other things that are out there towards no drugs and Project Alert and things like that. It was originally just going to be an addition to it. So an addition meaning that we would have nicotine addiction, positive youth development, and a little bit of other stuff on there and some resources for schools and parents. When we started rolling this out in 2016, schools loved it and said, Bonnie, if you would just add a little bit on refusal skills and a little bit on general tobacco, we could make it a comprehensive toolkit, which I laugh because the original planning in 2009 was not to have a comprehensive toolkit. But as we know with community-based participatory research, things change. We do have an FAQ page that I'll leave to you to look at. So to the meat of it in terms of today for Juul. So to give a little bit of history, so the toolkit launched in 2016. And then about a year later, so in around October 2016, in October of 2017, there were emails flying about. And remember, Juul's had only been launched a little bit before that and really only started becoming popular around 2016, 2017. And we started getting, we meaning my lab and around the toolkit, emails asking what we knew about Juul. And these were from California-based, were from California advocacy groups and California educators. And then basically saying, can you work on something around Juul's and this benzoic acid? So I'll be able to answer that question in a minute. And can you work on something? So I just hired this amazing research assistant who also had a biology background and chemistry background, and so he put this Juul PowerPoint together to help us all learn. And then after that, we found out that Juul was hiring a California ex-superintendent, school superintendent, Bruce Harder, to work on their own Juul prevention toolkit or curriculum in the schools. So this, of course, as you can imagine, it led to a flurry of activity and emails to me. Bonnie, we need you guys to put something on a Juul prevention curriculum, not yesterday, not tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but today or yesterday. Like, we need something up there because if you follow the tobacco world as I do and my lab does a lot, and as other researchers have said, the tobacco industry should not be doing their own prevention. We saw this with Philip Morris, and we saw this with other groups. And so basically everybody was coming to us who had already had a toolkit out there, was already being used throughout globally, and said, can you put something on? So we did, and we got it on. Unfortunately, it was not yesterday. It was tomorrow. We got it on in February. We did a soft launch of our Juul curriculum, and then we added to it. Actually, we're still adding to it. It is now Juul and other pod-based. So this is what that what the unit it looks like. It's unit 6 of our e-cigarette, and it's about Juuls as well as other pod-based systems. And you can see there some of the videos, as you were saying, we have some of the images on there from old, and then we have a really great Vox video on there. So what else do we have? So we have a number of PowerPoints in all the modules, but in the e-cigarette. So we have PowerPoints that are done, they're very interactive. I'll show you one example. They're very interactive and not boring, and they give not only youth information, but we also have these talking points. So if you're an educator or a healthcare provider, or by the way, we also have researchers using our slides to give presentations throughout the country, which is totally fine. We just ask that you keep our toolkit logo on there. And I'll tell you, maybe if I have a minute, I'll explain why. So we have these talking points. If you're like a lot of you in the audience who know a lot about tobacco and a lot about Juuls and you don't need them, you don't need to use them. But if you do need the talking points as a script, we have it on there for you as well, and they're in the notes section. Here's an example of a slide that we created very recently that got a lot of controversy, but is mathematically correct. And just to give you an example of it, and this is also an example where not only on the toolkit do we have the slides, but you can also print them and put them as posters throughout your offices, throughout your clinics, throughout schools, community-based organizations. So this, and Divya, I can't remember what you said, I think most people would say that Juuls has equivalent to a pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine. We actually challenge that to say it's more. And the reason we do that is simply math. If you look at the fact that a pack of cigarettes has 20 milligrams of nicotine in there, basically each cigarette has 8 milligrams of nicotine, but what you actually consume is closer to 1. If you look at it that way, and then you look at, so this is how we teach youth. So I'm both teaching you and giving you an example of how we talk about it with youth. Youth don't like cigarettes. As Karma said, cigarettes are gross. We actually published a paper together showing that perceptions of cigarettes are in the right direction, which means that they think they're awful. So we try to equate it when we educate youth to say, look, cigarettes is a pack of cigarettes is 20 cigarettes. A Juul pod is 41 milligrams of nicotine. If you just simply do the math, that's equivalent to almost 2 packs of cigarettes. Okay, how much they're actually inhaling, we don't know for sure, but just in terms of doing the math, when you talk to young people, you say, you know what, it's closer to about 2 packs. Maybe I'll give you 1.5 because it's not, but Juul brags about the fact that pretty much all of the pod goes into your body. Fix is closer to 75 cigarettes, and Soren is closer to 90. So that's teaching you, but again, giving an example of how the toolkit works to talk to youth, and then there are talking points on there. We've actually had a number of schools and organizations throughout the country who have asked if they can take this and print it in their schools, and we've said yes, just as long as they use our logo on there. The toolkit also has a number of activities. This is just a couple of examples. We have what's called a cheat chart. If you're familiar with something that as a researcher, I never knew, but working with educators I learned, which is this top thing. You can project it on the wall and say, what do you know or what have you heard about Juuls or e-cigs or hookah or whatever, and then as you go through the lesson, they can fill out whether it's true or false. So they can be doing this as small groups. We also get a lot of people who say e-cigarettes and Juuls are just harmless water vapor. So we have an activity on there that uses an aerosolized either deodorant or hairspray, and then a water spray bottle to show them that actually they're very different, and that what you're talking about is an aerosol, not a vapor. So we go through that exercise with youth. They love it, absolutely love it. We always bring up a couple youth, spray their hands, spray their hair, and they just get really into it. What? We can't do it in schools. Yeah, we actually would like to bring in real e-liquid, but you can't do that in most schools. Yeah, or a lighter. We also have a number of fact sheets on there that you'll find, and we don't have a Juul pod on there. We're just a little bit away from it. As you can imagine, we're very busy, so we're a little behind in creating a few things. But these two are things that we're having schools print, as well as healthcare providers print and put throughout their offices and schools. We also have Kahoot. Anybody familiar with Kahoot? All right, we have Kahoots it's basically a game that you can play on your phone. Question shows, and it's both, you're scored based on both accuracy and speed. As you can imagine, young people love this. So they get into groups, and we have teachers using this as a pre and post test or just a pre-test. And we have 10 questions per unit on there. And then we also, for schools and for educators who may not have internet access, you can also just print the PDF, and we, of course, have answers for you if you're not sure of the answers. So we try to make everything easy. We also have discussion guides. So this is because when we were doing the research on developing the toolkit, a lot of parents said, we'd like to follow along at home with what you're doing in school. So we developed discussion guides that the teachers can send home with their kids and say, talk about this with your parents at home. So we have a bunch of those. And then we have crash courses. These are just ways, we had a lot of educators who said, I really want to talk about nicotine addiction, but I don't understand it myself. Can you please give us some information? So there are crash courses to educate the educators that are a little more detailed than probably what you would use for youth directly, but they're on there. Just really quickly, ways to use the toolkit. You can use everything, which is a lot. You can use one PowerPoint. You can use one slide. You can use one activity. We also have examples online, and I'll say after if you're interested, and I have cards too for it, but you can use it in any way you want. So just to quickly tell you about the impact very, very quickly. So when we launched it, overall, we've had 40,000 views. When we launched it within the first month, we had over 2,000 people looking at it and using it. And then over the next 6 months, over 10,000. And then just in this last year, we've had 30,000 people reviewing it. So a lot of people are coming to it. And as you can imagine, amongst all the things on our toolkit, they're mostly going to the e-cigarette and Juul. We've also done some pre-post. If anybody is an educator who would like us, who are really looking for more people to help us do pre-post, we're also doing a randomized controlled trial right now of the toolkit effects. And actually we have a group of schools in Alabama did a pre-post with about 1,000 youth, and they showed changes in knowledge, attitudes, and intentions. Behavior was too soon, but they showed significant changes after using our curriculum. And just to give you just one, I actually used the curriculum to teach some students just a couple weeks ago, and I got a quote back from one of the parents who said, the kid said to the mom, I had no idea how bad all these things are for people, and I can't believe people, meaning companies, are pushing them so hard, especially on those it is illegal for. So clearly youth are not aware of what's going on, and clearly by educating them, we're doing some good. And then if you're interested, please do follow us on social media. Not only do we give updates and information on the toolkit, but I kind of use that as a way of also doing my because it's hard to do advocacy through Stanford directly, as many of you know if you're a professor, but I do it through here. So we do research updates, we do curriculum updates, we do it all. And then I don't have a slide, but we also just created the marijuana awareness and prevention toolkit that just launched about 2 weeks ago. It's just mapped. MAPT at stanford.edu. We only have about 20% of our curriculum up there. It'll be developed over the summer, but we at least started the launch. So that's it. Thank you. Oh, and I guess during discussion I can explain the benzoic, the whole thing. I'll do that during discussion. So that's great. Let's talk after. So, and you're only looking at one slide, the talking points. Realize that it's a package, that there's a lot more there that we talk to youth about. I also have an entire slide show that I can give you, and happy to, that's sort of, whoa. And on there is one slide set of about 25 slides that we would say, I mean, you're not going to get to it in one talking point. Right. I know. So I've actually been talking to a bunch of healthcare providers about, and actually a funder, about taking our toolkit, which is more for schools when you've got like 3 50-minute sessions, and creating 1 minute for exactly the purpose that you're talking about. And I have ideas, we just don't have I need the partnership and the time. So it is, I really do want to have a place on the toolkit that says for healthcare providers, and that has 1 minute. One of the things you can do is show that nicotine slide. That is one thing that you can do. And then we also have a nicotine slide that I don't have here, but I can show it to you. That also, so those two combined probably give you what you need, but we can talk about it. That is something that I would absolutely love to do, is to partner with healthcare providers on that piece. Because we've got the tools in the lab to do it, it's just been time. Okay, great, thank you. Yes and no. All that for just that. Most of the content could be used across middle and high school students, but there are a few that we do designate as better for one or the other. One of the things that I didn't mention, because I wasn't sure how many actual practitioners are in the audience, we actually are funded to be able to come out and do free trainings on it. So if you're at an area where you want, and you say, I want materials that are better for middle or better for high school, we do technical assistance and training, and you can go online and choose what you want, but we can also work with you to do it. So I can definitely point you to the ones that I think would be better for one age or the other. Middle and high. We're looking for schools in middle and high, and we're really, really desperately trying to find, because the problem we have is 2 years ago when we wrote the RCT grant, most schools said, of course we'll partner with you. And now because of Juuls and pods, most schools are saying, no, I don't want to wait 6 months to use your curriculum. I don't want to be a control school. That's our problem. So if you have a school that you could wait, maybe, you've got history the first semester and health ed the second semester, we can do the randomized controls. So please let me know. Thanks.